we managed to put together an IPO in 4 months in pure Talabat style. I think it was one of the fastest IPO in history.
Tomaso Rodriguez isn't just leading Talabat. He's redefining how the Middle East eats and shops.
We are in GCC plus Egypt, Jordan, Iraq. If you put together these countries, we're almost 200 million people.
As the CEO of Talabat, the company behind 2024's largest tech IPO in the world,
we should target to go public by December. I was like, okay. And I put down the phone. I call him back and like, you mean December 2025, right? It's like, no, December 2024. I'm like,
he's building what's next for food, commerce, and convenience.
One thing that is truly true to the core DNA of Talabat is that we're very good at execution.
In this episode, we talk about the wins, the challenges, and what it takes to run a multi-billion-dollar delivery engine powered by a team in the tens of thousands.
Once we put something in our minds, usually we manage to get there.
Let's get into it. Tomaso, you joined Talabat after scaling Uber and GrabFood in other markets like Italy and Asia Pacific. Tell me more, why the Middle East as your next destination?
Thank you for having me, Dania. This is such a pleasure to be here. I've been in this industry for many years. Actually, it started in 2012 with Uber. And I think I've been in Europe, as you said, and also in Asia later on. And I think Middle East is a part of the world I was always kind of attracted to and never experienced. And I really think I fell in love with Dubai and with the Middle East when I arrived here in 2019. There are several factors about that, but I think the first thing that really drew me here was Talabat, because I feel it was such a fantastic business and was kind of this raw diamond of this company that was built in 2004. So really one of the very first food delivery businesses in the world in terms of time. And had this massive potential, was doing already quite well, I would say, as a company. But as opposed to the other companies I work with, where we're growing so fast and we're trying to build a plane while flying somehow, Talabat had this super...
You took that from the first episode, that one. I said the exact same thing.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, but I mean, Talabat has this very strong foundation, right? So because it's been around for many years, and so it was a very established company with very strong processes, routines, but very commercially very strong, I would say. And I think if I can combine what I learned in kind of my previous experiences to kind of what I'm discovering about this company now, I think it could lead to, very amazing things.
Are you saying it's more of the company and the prospects than the market itself? I just want to get deeper into that because, for example, Asia Pacific is a large market. Were you scared about going to the Middle East that's considered a smaller market?
Well, in our industry, that's not really a concern, right? And I think that's the mistake that many people do when they think about the Middle East, right? If you look at we operate today in 8 markets, and the population we cover is around 180 million people, right? So we are in GCC plus Egypt, Jordan, Iraq. If you put together these countries, we're almost 200 million people, right? And when you think about us, you see riders everywhere in the city, like you see the splash of orange everywhere you go in the Middle East. But at the end of the day, if you divide the number of orders we do today by what we define the addressable population that we serve, we do just about 0.4 orders per capita per month, and people eat 90 times per month, right? So the potential headroom is massive. Even if we had 1/10 of the population that we serve today, it will still be a massive headroom, right? So the potential to grow is so big, and depending on the industry you're in, it doesn't matter, what's the size of the population.
And you've already grown Talabat a lot in the past years that you've led it. I'd love to know, though, how was your first week like when you joined Talabat? What were the early big calls that you made that changed the trajectory of the company?
I mean, in the first week, I probably did nothing. I mean, I was just trying to learn. And I think that probably was for the first month or maybe a bit
And that's
a
the
bit
best
more.
thing you should do as well,
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
just learn and listen to people around.
Absolutely. The worst thing you can do, I think, as a leader is just jump into action without understanding. I believe the big changes we made, and literally was, the whole company agreed with that. It's not that I came in and with changing things, but I think it was pretty obvious at the time. The real thing that boosted Talabat growth was this change from the what we call the marketplace model into the own delivery model, right? So the marketplace model was where restaurants were just getting connected to customers, and then the restaurant will do the delivery, right? But the problem with that is that customers cannot really track on the app, the rider coming. And restaurants have a limited fleet, so sometimes all the riders are available, sometimes they're all out, and maybe you wait 2 hours for your food. And so the experience was very unreliable somehow, and the retention rate and the return rate of the customers were not so high, right? Switching from that model to the model where we deliver with our own fleet, creates much more reliability, much better experience for the customer, and that really started boosting the growth of the company. A few weeks later, COVID came in. And also that was a massive booster, I would say, even though at the beginning it was absolutely not clear. I don't know if you remember, but the very first 3-4 weeks of COVID, everybody was scared about absolutely everything. And also when it comes to food delivery, people would say, oh, who's preparing my food? Who's handling my food? Well, the rider maybe has COVID. And so people were not ordering. Like in the first few weeks, we went literally to 0 orders.
And you definitely came out of this much, much stronger. In 2024, Talabat was the largest tech IPO in the world. Congratulations on that. We rarely hear stories like that. So I'd love to get all the details from you. Tell me more about that process. How were you as a team able to make that happen? How did you guys handle the pressure that came with it as well?
So I think the IPO story is a bit of a fun story because, as you probably know, Talabat up until the IPO was fully owned by a larger group called the Delivery Hero, which is listed in Germany. And the decision came in around July, August actually, when the group CEO called me and told me, I think we should make this happen, right? And I was like, great. And I said, okay, we should target to go public by December. I was like, okay. Then I put down the phone. I call him back and like, you mean December 2025, right? It's like, no, December 2024. I'm like, that's literally 4 months from now. I was like, yes. And so I think we managed to put together an IPO in 4 months in pure Talabat style. I think it was one of the fastest IPO in history.
Are you serious?
No,
4
it's
months.
true story. So I think it was super intense, but I think one thing that is truly true to the core DNA of Talabat is that we're very good at execution, right? And once we put something in our minds, usually we manage to get there. And it was an incredible experience. We were on the road meeting investors, local investors, international investors. And it was so amazing to see that we've been building this business heads down for the last 5 years. And we never, stopped and thought about, okay, what did we build? What are we going to build, etc. And once we started meeting investors, everybody was like, guys, you have the best business in the world. Like you have the best food delivery business in the world. This is really amazing, right? And we're so excited that we got so much recognition, from also outside our turf and American investors and everything like that. So it was an extremely amazing experience for all of us, and to see that level of recognition.
That is unheard of. I'm sure that's unheard of. But that's all remarkable. I'd love for you to tell us practically, though, how did you guys make it happen?
Well, practically, when you start, there's a lot of legal and company restructuring process. For example, we didn't have a company to list. So Talabat was kind of a set of companies. We had one for this country, one for this business line and whatever, but there was no holding company that will all the other companies will fall into to list. And so we had to do all that restructuring work at the beginning. There was a lot of legal paperwork and whatever. And I think all that part is where the CEO is not much involved, and a lot of the burden is on the CFO and the legal team, etc. And then what I think is more the fun part begins, where you have to kind of write down your story and say, okay, what is my, what they call the equity story. So why should someone invest in this company, right? And we were all like, oh, look what we built in the past, etc. And the bankers told us, this is rubbish. Like, this is not what you should be talking about, because it's nothing about what you did in the past. It's all about what you're going to do in the future, right? And if you're kind of a startup founder, usually you start with kind of a long-term objective, but then all your successive fundraising are like, okay, look at the results of the past. I'm kind of moving towards my objective, but it's more about look at what I achieved in the past, right? The IPO is all about look at the next 5 to 10 years, right? How is the equity story evolving, right? And so that kind of was a mindset shift for all of us.
And if you can pinpoint one thing that you guys, the team, did super well that got you guys there, what would that be?
I think it was we had a tight team working at the IPO. I think at some point it got to 200 plus people, but everybody was really working night and day to make it happen. But everybody was also so excited to make it happen. So I think when you do something that you really love and when you're excited about something, it's kind of doesn't matter the amount of hours you have to put in, you will do it with pleasure, right? I think that was the mood, that was the spirit, and that's what kept all of us united throughout the IPO. And actually, when my CFO and I went on the road, I was feeling a lot of pressure. I was feeling a lot of pressure because there was so much work that was being done for the IPO. And then it was all on us to kind of convey the message and have the investors invest. If we're not convincing in that part, and people were not investing, all the work that all these people have done would have gone to waste. So we felt very kind of honored, but also a lot of responsibility to for all the people that worked on the IPO to make it happen.
And having gone through the entire process, a lot of the entrepreneurs that have their own startups, everyone's path is, I want to be listed, I want to hit IPO. Do you think this is a feasible path for everyone?
It depends on what's your product and what's your objective, right? Going public is not something. I mean, depends. Why do you want to go public? That would be my question, right? And usually the reason why historically companies were going public was to raise money, right? Because it's the best way to raise a large amount of money, and you need a large amount of money to do large things, right? But today there's a lot of capital also in the private markets, right? And there's also exits in the private markets, right? So it depends on what you want to do. If you want to build a company and you want to be with that company for your 20 years or whatever, I think that's possibly a path. But if your idea is like, I'm going to build this, I'm going to bring it to this point, and then I'm going to sell the company, I'm going to do something else, doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to do an IPO.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing people should ask themselves is why, and do I actually need it? So I'm with you on that for sure. What's interesting about you, Tomaso, is that even after the IPO and the remarkable kind of milestone that you guys have made, you're still very much on growth at Talabat. So tell me more about what does untapped growth for Talabat look like?
Yes, I think we reported like our Q1 results. We're still growing 33% year over year. And if you put that in perspective, it's massive. We're a 21 years old company, still growing 33% is quite remarkable, I would say. And we're very excited about that. And a big part of that, honestly, is the market, right? So we are in a market that is constantly growing, not just the UAE, but all the other markets we are operating into. And as I was telling you before, really the untapped potential is there. 0.4 orders per capita per month, and people eat 90 times. Probably in some of our markets, people eat more than 90 times a month, to be honest.
That's me last month.
But really, if you look at our top customers, the 0.1% or less of our customers, they order 120, 130 times a month, more than 3 times a day. Can you imagine what's the demographic of that customer?
Yeah, don't judge me. I feel like that was me last month. Things were really busy. No. But it's true because like with today's needs and people's busy work schedules and whatnot, you turn it to convenience, right?
But the great thing about that, those top customers are very young kids, like 18 to 22 years old. They're home, they're just studying, or they're They just want something. They're just so used to take out the phone out of their pocket, push a button, and get it delivered, right? And the great news about the 18 to 22 years old is that in 10 years, they're going to be 28 to 32 years old, right? And so we have these massive tailwinds of new consumers coming to fruition of our products that are going to really boost our growth for the future, right? And that's just food. Then when you look at groceries, we started in 2019 to deliver groceries as well. And today we're just about 2% of the total offline grocery business. And our grocery business is growing at almost 50% year over year, right? Despite being almost around $2 billion already in GMV, it's still growing 50% year over year, right? So there's a massive potential also on groceries, right? So I think in terms of growth, we're pretty good for the next 20, 30 years. And I'm really, really excited to see that happening.
While we're talking about groceries, can you talk to me more about the product roadmap? Did you guys stick to it? And was groceries always going to be the next thing on it?
Groceries was not always going to be there. Actually, in 2018, 2019, we had a lot of debates around whether we should do that or not. At the end of the day, we're a food delivery company, etc. But the way we think about new products and expansion is, where do we have a right to win? Right, and I think that's what companies should ask themselves about, right? So, if in our case, grocery, why does it make sense? Because we have already a fleet on the ground, and then launching a vertical like grocery could make the fleet much more efficient. A customer that seeks convenience to get food delivered probably will also want to get groceries delivered, right? And so we believe, okay, we have a right to win there, right? But there are other things where we think that even if we launch another vertical, like, I don't know, booking of hotel rooms, right? We will probably never do that because we have no advantage versus a pure play that does that, like a booking.com. People always go to booking.com because they have the best selection and everything else. We have no real advantage or no real leverage, and we have no right to win there.
Yeah, and that's what I find, like, to me exciting, is because you're kind of upselling to these existing customers, right? You're not looking for new customers, you're not trying to change behavior, and you're using your existing resources.
Absolutely.
Well. Yeah.
But also, if you can be more efficient than a pure play, if you can be better, at the end of the day, you can also offer to the consumers at a better experience and cheaper, potentially, right? So I think how we like to think about it is we're large in the ecosystem and bringing more convenience to our customer base.
What's your take on competition, though? Because you operate in a very competitive market. There's the likes of Careem, Amazon, Noon, all fighting for the same set of customers. So what's your take on competition?
People usually say competition makes you better. I honestly truly believe that, right? Because there's a lot of things that sometimes you don't see, and like competitors always try to get better at things where you're bad at, right? And that really exposes your weak spots, right? And help you overcome those. At the same time, helps you focus on what are your best attributes, right? As a business, and double down on those to be ahead of competition, right? So we have this saying at Talabat. Do you know the story of the lion and the gazelle?
Oh yes, I did see that. Yes, from
Exactly.
Sheikh Mohammed, right?
From Sheikh Mohammed, right? So he always says, like, every morning Africa gazelle wakes up, she knows she has to run faster than a lion, otherwise she gets eaten. And every morning a lion wakes up and she knows she will have to run faster than gazelle, otherwise she will die of starvation, right? So our evolution of the story is, in business, probably is the only place where it's best to be a gazelle. And if you're the gazelle, you go straight, the lion goes straight. You go left, the lion goes left. You jump in a bush, the lion jumps in a bush, right? But the only moment where the gazelle gets eaten is when she starts looking back and starts looking, where is the lion, right? Because otherwise the gazelle will always run faster than the lion, right? And I think that's a bit how we think about it. Like, it's great when you see competition that copies stuff that you do because they're the lion, right? So as long as we keep being the gazelle, as long as we keep being the innovators, as long as we keep putting our customer needs front and center, we're in a good spot. We start being in a bad spot the moment we look back and see where's the lion.
I think that's very, very powerful. Yeah. And we spoke about like regional competitors, but what about global players as well? They're consolidating. We see, for example, DoorDash acquiring Deliveroo. Yeah. Does that worry you? How are you protecting your market share in the Middle Eastern market?
I think, global consolidation is somewhat a good thing. I believe is overdue for food delivery. It's been the most competitive and cutthroat business that I know, right?
Really is.
Across the world. I think it's good that you see that some of that is happening now. Look, it doesn't change anything for us. At the end of the day, we had, I mean, a lot of competitors in the region. We still have a lot of competitors. They're very good competitors, and I mean, everybody brings their own new thing in. And I'm just wait to see what is DoorDash going to bring to Deliveroo if they're going to bring something to the Middle East. So we're going to learn something new. We're going to evolve, and that's the nature of the game.
You said something very true, which is this is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
And you guys are operating in not only a competitive market, but also with tight margins. So what's your approach on profitability?
So our approach of profitability, sometimes people say, oh, you're the most profitable food delivery business in the world. Are you not worried that, someone can come and disrupt those margins, right? But when you look at really how our margins are broken down, we have around 6.5% of GMV, which is our EBITDA margin. And we have almost more than half of that actually is coming from advertising revenues, right? And that's something that you can only have and build at scale. So when you reach a certain scale, the partners in your app who want to start to advertise, and these kind of our restaurant partners, is our grocery partners, but also CPG companies that advertise on our platform, right? And if you take that out, our margins become much, much smaller, right? Then we have a lot of investments that our partners do on our app in terms of marketing. So deals and discounts for the customers, right? And those deals and discounts are basically money that is not coming out from our marketing pocket, but it's coming from a restaurant pocket. As long as we provide them value, as long as for every dollar they put, they get more dollars back, that's something they will want to do to keep investing. And also that you get just with scale. So if you take out these two components from our P&L, you see that we operate a marketplace at a very, very, very tight margin, if not break even, right? And that's very hard to disrupt.
And what you said about like the advertising streams, it's a very important stream, but it's also something you can only switch on later once you have active customers on the platform. So for anyone that's starting a similar business or something that depends on advertising as a stream, what should they do for the first phase when they need to have those active customers on?
For every marketplace, the golden rule is to start from the supply first, right? So if for a food delivery business, the most important thing is that to make sure you have restaurants on your app and to make sure you have riders that are good to deliver those orders, right? And at the beginning, this will be at a loss. You will have to compensate the riders for their time, even though most of the times they're not going to deliver an order because you're just waiting for customers to come in. But you need to make sure that the moment the customer come in, they can find the rider and the restaurant at that point, right? And customers will choose you over someone else mostly because of your selection, right? So we believe that food delivery business works on three dimensions. One is what we call selection, and the second one is experience. So how do you deliver the orders? Is it reliable? Is it fast, etc.? And the last one is affordability. So what kind of deals and discounts and value for money do you provide for the consumers, right? But it's very important that you have the first. So this is the order. You need first selection, second experience, and third affordability.
You have a very interesting policy. We were talking about team earlier. You have a very interesting policy with the team. It's a 5-day work from office policy, I believe. Tell me more. I think most founders are preferring more of the hybrid model. Why is it important to having team in the office 5 days a week?
Look, I get criticized a lot because of that. And we were talking just before the podcast about, I just came back from San Francisco. And San Francisco, I used to go there a lot in the 14, 15, 16, those years. Today, it was a very vibrant city, kicking and whatever. Now, I feel it's a ghost town, right? Because the work from home policy really took over for any job there. We with my CFO, we were meeting some investors in these investment firms that have 20,000 square foot offices, and there was absolutely no one inside. Usually the person that was having the meeting with us will come just to open the office and to have the meeting with us. Was really, really insane. All the commercial activities were struggling because everybody moved out of the city, right? And I think this just kind of bringing it to an extreme. But for us, I think if you're an investment firm and every team is like 5 people and they work in their silo and they don't interact with each other, maybe it's still fine. But for a business like ours that is super interconnected, and marketing needs to talk to logistics, and logistics needs to talk to sales, and sales need to talk to product, and everybody needs to be in the same room and have meetings all together, working from home is not really an option, right? Because what you lose in not having those connections happen spontaneously, like you cannot recover, right? And the reason is like, today you meet someone in the corridor and you would just chat about something, some little problem. If you have that little problem, probably you will not set up a Zoom call to discuss with that person otherwise. Or you have Zoom calls and you see people with kids jumping in the back, or like you get a delivery of something while you're on the call. Wait a second, I go, whatever, get distracted. I remember before COVID, we had Talabat employees always had a Friday thing where they were going at a hotel just near the office and, socialize, get drinks and everything. And it was very spontaneous. Almost everybody was going, very fun, and you build those social interactions. Post-COVID, so during COVID, then we worked from home, and post-COVID, we started coming back to the office. It took 2 years for that to come back, for people to say, okay, let's start going out again. And I think those social interactions are as important, if not more important, than what you build in the office for me. And you cannot build that working from home.
I agree with you that it's a lot faster when you're in the office. There's a lot of exchange of ideas. Things move a lot faster. But do you need it 5 days a week is the question.
Well, the problem is that if you don't do it 5 days a week and you do it 4 days a week, you will have, what we were doing, we were rotating teams, right? So one team stays home on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. And the problem is that it doesn't really work to have a meeting where 4 people are in the same room in the office and 2 are home, because the 2 home are going to get somehow excluded from the conversation that's happening in the room. And then if you say, okay, we don't do that, we leave it to anybody, to the employees to decide which day they want to stay home, you have even more so that problem somehow. I know people don't necessarily like it, but I believe it's good for the company, but it's also ultimately good for employees in the long run.
We talked about environment, offices, IPO. Let's look into the future.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about growth as well, but what are the challenges that you guys are expecting for the next phase of Talabat?
Usually all the challenges you expect are the ones that don't happen, and usually the one you don't expect are the ones that actually happen. My CBO has a super nice saying. He always says, no battle plan survives the first encounter with the enemy, right? So I think it's very true. But I believe, there's always new competition coming in, always stronger competition coming in, and we also get stronger by the time competition comes. There are new business lines we're entering into, we're venturing. The latest ones are fintech. We launched a postpaid product. We launched some co-branded credit cards, and I think all these are giving us a lot of very good signals that we're kind of in the right direction somehow. We're very focused on our Pro subscription program. We see it brings a lot of value to our consumers, and a lot of stickiness also to the platform. We launched also Dine Out deal type of value proposition, where if you're a Pro customer, you get a lot of discounts also dining out. So we're doing many things. And we're very focused also on our AI strategy. I know it's a bit of a buzzword these days.
So what are some of the use cases we can expect out of AI?
There are several. So there's the obvious consumer ones where everybody's going to have some sort of prompting order system, right? And of course, we're working on that as well. But there are also and a lot more in the back end, right? And where we're focusing on, I think that it's divided. The AI word for business is divided in two areas. The one that is kind of generates efficiency for you in terms of less people or whatever, and the other one that generates, those what we call the 10xers, right? They're gonna make you grow exponentially because suddenly you have unlimited people, unlimited agents to do something that before was made by humans, right? And they can enhance your manpower. And I think we're focused a lot on these ones, much less on these ones. I think there are very good opportunities, for example, in sales. There are products that help you qualify your leads. That make the efficiency of your sales team much better, and suddenly you have maybe 300 people sales team that becomes as effective as 3,000 people sales team, right? On the people side, on the engineering side, all our engineers now are using Copilot and are developing using AI tools, and the output is becoming much faster, right? And much better. We're doing a lot of internal courses for our employees to how to use all our internal AI tools that we have now. And we really want to make sure that everybody uses it at the full potential, because generate so there are tools now where you can, just ask, what is the Talabat Pro penetration in city X in Egypt? And it will just go and search into all your documents and it will find that information for you, right? This to take decisions is, so today, otherwise I would have asked that decision in a meeting and would have known after 1 week the answer, right? So the ability to make decision very fast through AI now is there.
Yeah, and we can already see it. And I can't look back after that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm already seeing a lot of buzz about AI agents not only prompting your order, but a robot delivering it, an actual robot delivering it. What's your take on it?
So we've been doing a robot delivery since actually a few years. We started in Expo 21, where we had our own kitchen in Expo, and we were delivering throughout the Expo site with robots. Actually, by the way, the funniest part of that is that all these robots had cameras and all the kids were stopping the robots and they were playing with the robots. So we have all the footage of the kids playing with the robots. It was really hilarious.
That would be a great marketing campaign, by the way.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll do that. And then we started doing it also in Dubai Silicon Oasis. We had some robot pilots. I think that the technology is quite there, but still doesn't provide that additional benefit to the customer that we see. Also drone deliveries. I think there's a lot of talks about drone deliveries, and it's something also we believe in. But today, I think the technology is there. I think the regulation is not there, because today you need to get a license for every single route you want to do. So if you want to deliver multi-point to multi-point, it's just not possible. You have to do kind of hub to spoke type of delivery. What I believe is going to be much faster happening is EVs, right? And EVs with bikes, we're running some experiments, and we're seeing that we can deliver the same cost, if not better, through EVs. The problem today is really the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we need battery swapping stations and whatever. And I think the reality is that we need to realize whether we want to do it, we want to partner with someone to do it. But I believe EV for deliveries would absolutely be the future.
I'll definitely want to see that.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about business, Tomaso. I'd love to know you more as a person. Can you tell me more about a time in your life where you felt like, oh, I failed at something?
I think it's probably my first startup, my first and last startup. So that's how I started actually my career. I was, driving around promoters during my university time to make some money on the side, and I realized that they were promoting and giving out free products, but they were collecting some customer data from those interviews, because it was a legal requirement to hand out free products. And so, but then they were throwing away that data, right? So with a friend of mine, we built the app for the iPhone to kind of collect that data and create market insights based on that, right? That's not mind-blowing product today, but back then it was, I think, 2008. So the iPhone 3 just came out. So it was kind of a crazy thing to build apps for the iPhone, right? So it was growing very well, doing super. We got a couple of very big FMCG clients that were working with us. And back then we didn't have any money to build and scale the company. So I asked a lawyer friend of mine before closing the first contract if he could write a contract for me for that. So he wrote it, and he didn't want money. He was like, "I'll do it for free, etc." Few years later, this first client tell us, "Well, you sold us your software, right?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You're paying a license to use it?" And I'm like, "No, look at the contract. The software is ours." I was like, "What?" And actually they were right. And so we had to sit down and settle. And I usually say I made an exit from my first startup, but actually it was not an exit. I had to give it out for peanuts to this customer. So I think, I don't know if it's a learning, but it's like just to get work for free from friends.
It for sure is, because a lot of founders do go through that.
Yeah.
Like they speed up the legal process. Let's just write whatever contract. But then years down the line, things like this happen. But like, even though it's a learning opportunity, I'm sure at that moment, you felt like you failed at that. That's very difficult
Absolutely.
to deal with.
I was so angry with myself. So angry with myself.
Awesome. Shall we wrap it up with a quick rapid fire?
Absolutely.
Are you ready? Who inspires your leadership style?
My leadership style, I know is very controversial, but I think the original Uber founder, Travis, is someone who really, I think he did good, bad things, whatever, but is someone that can really inspire people. Is someone that can really rally the troops against a mission. And when we started Uber, that's how we felt like we were on a mission.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
A rock star.
What is the biggest mistake someone can make while setting up a business?
Getting free advice from a friend.
Journey or destination? What matters more?
Journey.
Tomaso, what's next for you? You've had an amazing journey at Talabat and your previous experiences, but what's next? What's something we can expect?
Look, I really enjoy being at Talabat. I really enjoy being here. I enjoy my colleagues and the time we spend together. My team, I think, is the most fantastic team I've ever had. And I'm happy. I'm very happy. So I'm not expecting anything else or anything more. And in life, I never, all the big changes that happened to my life were never because I planned it, right? They just happened. But right now, I'm very happy where I am.
So what's next for you is exactly where you are, but just in a better, I guess, spot, more growth. And
yeah, I mean, look, for me, I identify myself with Talabat somehow now, and
part of your identity.
Exactly, it's part of my identity. So for me, if Talabat is successful, if we can build more things, and if you can get better every day, I feel it also as a personal development.
Just on that, do you think that's dangerous? That it is part of your identity? Or do you think that's how, like, when you love something, you can excel at it? Because I keep asking myself this question, wherever I am, that becomes part of my identity. And I ask myself, like, should it be my identity?
I think it's not bad, right? And I mean, maybe people think if it's a job, it's a bad thing, but I don't think so, right? Because it can be your job, but could be your passion, could be music, could be dance or whatever it is, right? So as long as it's something you love, I mean, no one should criticize you for that, right?
Absolutely. And on that note, thank you so much, Tomaso. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.